Ohio State loses 2 starting tackles to the NFL off of last year's offensive line. It's got some guys moving to what are not new positions for them, but new positions for them at Ohio State. So will the Ohio State offensive line be better in the fall of 2022 than it was last year? I'm Nathan Baird from cleveland.com, along with Doug Lesmerises and Stephen Means. I'll ask you first, Stephen, will this offensive line, which right now is Paris Johnson Jr. at left tackle, Donovan Jackson at left guard, Luke Whippler at center, Matt Jones at right guard, Dwan Jones at right tackle, will that be better than the offensive line that for most of last season was among the best in the nation and then slipped up a little bit against Michigan? Will they be better in 2022?
Yes, because center is a second-year starter at this point. Dwan Jones, a second-year starter who had a chance to go pro. He said his draft grade was fourth or fifth round, which is why he came back. But this is a guy who might be able to push himself into the first or second round now. Matthew Jones is a veteran who he's never been a starter here, but he's played enough reps, especially last year because they were working him in. And then your left side is Paris Johnson, the number 1 tackle in the 2020 recruiting class, and Donovan Jackson, the number 1 guard in the 2021 recruiting class. And we've done enough hyping up both of those guys to assume that at least one of them might be at an All-American level this year. So, yeah, you've got 3 legit interior guys where Kevin Wilson already said they're not worried about them at all. They're more worried about the tackles and whether or not they can block one-on-one against elite guys. And I think we're all confident in saying that Paris and Dwan can do that at this point. So, yeah, this has a chance to be the best offensive line in the country.
To me, the guys like Luke Whippler and Dwan Jones who are back at their same position for another year, sure, there should be some natural improvement there. It's the infusion of Donovan Jackson at left guard and Paris Johnson Jr. at left tackle is what, to me, could take this up a notch. What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, if you hear the stories, I mean, everybody I think got asked about Donovan Jackson, and the athletic stories you hear about this guy. It's like everybody like, this is Ohio State, but it feels like this guy's a little different. So to have him ready to step in, he may be as good of an athlete that we've seen on the interior of the Ohio State offensive line since I don't know when. So that idea is huge. And I do think, Kevin Wilson talked about a lot with the 2 tackles. They have really talented guys there. Dwan Jones said his wingspan's 7'5". The idea, I'm almost a little surprised. That's interesting, Stephen. 4th and 5th round because his traits are all there. He said his feet have got to get a little better, but his wingspan really makes a difference, pushing edge rushers wide. He'll get a little better. But Luke Whippler, I think that's a real thing. I was at Luke Whippler for a while, and he was talking a lot about he's a high football IQ guy. The quarterback, C.J. Stroud, is a high football IQ guy. They have a connection. They have an understanding of what they're seeing together, and I feel like they're really on the same page. And that pairing, they're going to grow together, which is going to mean they're going to have the right blocking calls. They're going to be able to adjust things to what the defense is showing them, and that's going to make the whole line better. So I think there is a mental part here, and I think there are some traits in a bunch of the dudes that those 2 things together, I agree with Steven, shot to be as good as anybody in the country.
And the guy that I don't want to make sure isn't forgotten is Matt Jones. He's a guy who's been sort of hanging around in the background for a couple years, was sort of the utility guy, playing all over the place last year. I think if he steps up and really solidifies right guard, if that's just his gig and he holds it and performs well all season, then that's sort of the stability that this line needs for maybe some of these other guys take it up a notch. If there's any problems with him, they're not as deep as they were last year on the offensive line. Last year, that was like one of the traits of this offensive line room was just how deep it was, how you could go to the second level and feel pretty confident in guys. I don't think this group has the same traits. So it's up to these 5 guys to really, take this job, take each of their 5 jobs and run with it. More discussion about this on the Buckeye Talk podcast for Friday, and get the text 614-350-3315.